it again at a town meeting in the future?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Calbar, question, please.
Paul Calaba, yeah, 8 Bell Street. So I would say that you as a moderator had let people run over time by at least 20 minutes. So I would say that you should allow both of these sides to have another 20 minutes in comments because you have not controlled the time.
I stand by my earlier comment. I'm going to take a speaker from both sides, and then I will ask the room if they wish to continue debate.
Evening. My name is Kendall Buell. I live at 247 High Street, and I represent your firefighters on the building committee. And we get your concerns. They have been very well articulated. They are thoughtful. Speaking personally, as somebody who lives in this town and raised his kids in this town and is looking forward to hanging out in Ipswich with grandkids some days, I want a very careful and considered and conservative approach to any changes we make in the way that we zone our town, the way we permit and build things. But as hard as I've considered these arguments and thought about it myself, I still can wholeheartedly stand in front of you today asking you to support this article, because as hard as I think about it, I do not see how this in any way subverts the democratic process, the rights of our citizens, and the precedence argument. Well, our voters have been enacting and repealing and changing zoning bylaws when it was in the best interest of the town for as long as there's been town meeting. There is nothing more democratic than to get up in front of you and to ask you, the voters, to adjudicate this question, to defend this project that you have voted for over and over and over and over again from this roadblock, to support the zoning board and the planning board and their decisions that came after all those public meetings, to support your first responders, to support this meeting. It is as democratic as you can get, folks. Giving us, the voters, this choice tonight is not only legally appropriate, it's morally appropriate, and passing this article is morally and fiscally the thing to do, because if we don't do this tonight, the next time that we debate a public safety facility years from now, after years of cost increases, when the ARPA money has gone away, the choice in front of this body is going to be either to reach way deeper into our pockets, or to say to your cops and your firefighters, hey, we really support you, and we would really like to move you out of those deplorable conditions, but we just can't afford it. Nobody here wants to make that choice. Please support this.
Good evening, Sue Capola, 29 Pine Swamp. And let me first say that I highly doubt there's a single person not in support of police and fire departments having a new state-of-the-art facility or facilities, including myself. I felt compelled to speak tonight as I was originally a supporter of the project and was not opposed to even the location. That said, as I watched the project progress, my views have changed. I ask for each of you to put yourself in the seat of anyone who has had the courage to voice their opinion about the public safety project, and keep in mind that this could be you in your neighborhood next. The town has been misleading since day one. The town committee promised to integrate the building into the neighborhood, yet there was no outreach. When townspeople came forward to voice concerns, they were dismissed, called liars, bullied, and threatened. And I have many examples. I'll only read you 2 due to time. Wendy put a sign inspector presented on a Saturday to fall and 2 days to follow to request removal and threatened fines. This is unprecedented in Ipswich, and she removed the sign. Vanessa repeatedly asked for preservation of a buffer zone between her property and the public safety building to preserve her property, privacy, and a natural environment. She was met with sheer disregard and disrespect for her request, and in fact, she spoke up. The building was moved closer, and they put the fire parking on her side. People are talking about this is about 10. We have a letter with over 125 signatures and a petition with over 1,000 signatures against the way this public safety building process has been going and designed, located. We couldn't publish it because, with all the signatures, because people were afraid of retaliation. People are for the public safety building. They are for our firefighters and our police officers. They deserve buildings that are safe, sound, and allow them the appropriate equipment to do their jobs. There's no question. But this is a proposed zoning amendment. It's one more way of manipulating the legal processes and structure that has been in place, and balances, so the town manager and the public safety committee can push their agenda while trampling on the right and voices of the townspeople and the taxpayers. They don't like the rules, so let's change them. What comes next? Let's give our fire and police officers the buildings they deserve and not use a zoning amendment to circumvent a process that has been in place for decades. We are all townspeople and neighbors. We should be coming together and do this right and do it right. No one should fear retaliation for having an opinion. Remember, this could be you if this goes through. And to quote Fred Rogers, all we've ever asked to do in this life is to treat our neighbor, especially our neighbor who is in need, exactly as we would hope to be treated ourselves. That's our ultimate responsibility. Please vote no.
That we would listen to two more speakers, and then I would ask the room if they wish to continue debate or to move to a vote. So I'm going to ask that question now of the room. I have if you wish to continue the debate, I'm going to ask you to press 1 on your voting device. If you wish to conclude debate and move to a vote on the question itself, press 2. Are we clear? If you wish to end debate, press 1. If you I guess I made a mistake. Yeah, and I'm happy to see that you are paying attention. So let's do this again. If you want to stop debate, press 1. If you want to continue debate, at some point the moderator makes the rules. Now here are the rules. That if you want to continue debate, press 1. If you want to continue debate, press 1. If you want to stop debate, press 2. Continue, 1. Stop, 2. Vote now.
Thank you.
It's been open for 15 seconds. I'll ask it to be closed. So we're going to continue debate, right? Right? That ends debate. So they'll change it to actual numbers, but the vote is to have no further debate. So now we'll go to the main motion. Okay. We're going to show the numbers. Can we show the numbers for that vote, just to be clear? Yeah. No, the vote on the debate is simple majority. The numbers will come up shortly. But it's clear that the room wishes to discontinue debate. We can move on. So, on the motion, all those in favor of the motion to amend the protective zoning bylaw signify by pressing 1. If you're opposed to the motion, signify by pressing 2. Please vote as quickly as you can. Close the voting. The motion requires a 2/3 majority. It fails. Now, before you leave the room, remember my caution about the quorum. We need 200 voters to stay to finish the business of town meeting. We'll move to Article number 12, which is the Dow Dam borrowing for the water department. And take your conversation outside, please, if you're leaving. I'll recognize Mr. Doherty from the Select Board on Article 12.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and through you to the members of town meeting. Article 12, Water Department Dam Upgrades. To see if the town will vote to increase to $2,700,000 the $1,500,000 appropriation and borrowing authority adopted under Article 6 of the warrant at the October 24th, 2023 special town meeting, to pay costs of surveying, designing, permitting, and constructing improvements to the town's water system, including the payments of costs incidental or related thereto, and to specify the project to be constructed as water system improvements to Dow Dam by amending said Article 6 to read as follows. That 1, $2,700,000 is hereby appropriated to survey, design, permit, and construct improvements to the town's water system, including the payment of costs incidental or related thereto, and to specify the project to be constructed as water system improvements to the Dow Dam, and 2, to raise this appropriation by authorizing the treasurer, with the approval of the Select Board, to issue bonds or notes under the provisions of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44, as amended, or any other enabling authority, and 3, to rescind the borrowing authority conferred by Article 20 of the May 9th, 2023 annual town meeting.
And the vote of the board?
What's that?
The vote of the board?
So this article keeps showing up for some reason, and it's because of one reason or another, but
Point of order,
this...
Mr. Moderator.
Mr.
I
Howell?
did not hear George Howe, 29 Hodgkins Drive. I did not hear you say, I move that. You started with to see if.
Yeah, so according to bond counsel and the town manager, this is the one motion of tonight's warrant articles that it must start with to see if the town.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So, like I said earlier, this article keeps appearing before us because of one reason or another, but the project itself has been overwhelmingly approved and supported by town meeting, and we ask that it be supported by this town meeting Again, it does have the unanimous support of the Select Board, which is also your water commissioners and wastewater commissioners. And what it basically does is that there is a valve at the bottom of the reservoir, and the valve has not been opened or in working order in many years. This project allows us to make sure that that valve at the bottom is operational, which means we will actually be able to capture more of the water within the dam and within the reservoir. The reason why it has come before us a few times is because of technical reasons, language being incorrect at the May town meeting, and then readjustments having to be made financially at this town meeting. This project is partially funded by a grant, which we were awarded, and the cost of the project is what you see before us. We do have the project out to bid, we have received the bids, and this is what the final cost of the project will be. So with that, for a third time, we ask for your support of this very important project that will help continue us moving forward in our infrastructure needs.
Mr. Bork, FinCom?
Good evening, Joe Burke, that's B-O-U-R-Q-U-E, Bush Hill Road. I'm the Finance Committee liaison to the Water and Wastewater Subcommittees. And before I provide my remarks, I'd like to let you know that the Bruins just won 2-1, so there'll be game 6. All right. The Finance Committee unanimously supports Article 12 by a vote of 8-0. Approval of this article will fund necessary and critical upgrades to the Dow Dam and its affiliated components. There's several benefits. Michael probably talked to them as well. It'll satisfy mandates issued by the Massachusetts Department of Dam Safety that have been outstanding since the dam failed back in 2018. It'll also establish the low-level intake that Michael talked about. That'll allow access to an additional 10 million gallons of water in the reservoir. And most importantly, it'll restore this critical asset to its useful life and extend the longevity. As Michael said also, this is probably the second or third time it's been brought before town meeting, and you folks have supported this very, very strongly. The project is fully designed, it's ready to move forward, but due to the fact that it's a very specialized project, the construction's going to have to take place in an active reservoir. It's complicated, it's risky, it's kind of unique work. There is some liability and some risk involved. We only received 2 bids, and the lowest bid came in a little higher than had been previously approved. So this approval of this article tonight will help us solve the funding gap and move forward with a critical component of the town water resources. So the Finance Committee once again requests and recommends your continued strong support. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. It's always a pleasure working with Joe because he does keep us updated on what's happening with local sports teams. So thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. Open the floor for any comments, questions. Mr. Kalbach. You, sir, are at the pro microphone? What a change.
So you said to go to the nearest one, so here I am. So now that we voted down that other item, we can spend the $2 million that we have in ARPA funds for this project, which would reduce the cost down to, what is it? $2 million off the price tag of this, because it's a ready project and we can complete it in the time that's required to do it, to spend those ARPA funds. So in essence, we are not losing those ARPA funds. We should redirect them immediately to some other project, whether it's this one or some other one, so that we can spend that and the town doesn't lose out on our $2 million.
Any other comments or questions on this request to approve a borrowing? If not, this requires a 2/3 vote because it is a borrowing. We'll go to a vote. All those in favor of the motion signify by pressing 1. All those opposed, press 2. And we'll open the polling. Close the polling. Passes by 2/3. Vote of 340 to 24. Article 13, Water Department well upgrades. Again, back to Mr. Doherty from the Select Board.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Again, through you to the members of town meeting, Article 13, Water Department well upgrades. I, Michael S. Doherty, Select Board member, move that 1, to appropriate the sum of $1,500,000 to survey, design, permit, and construct improvements to the town's Browns and Mile Lane wells and any other improvements to the town's water system as determined necessary by the Water Department Asset Management Plan or system conditions, including the payment of costs incidental or related thereto. And 2, to raise this appropriation by authorizing the treasurer, with the approval of the Select Board, Board of Water Commissioners, to issue bonds or serial notes under the provisions of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44, as amended, or any other borrowing authority.
Please.
Again, you know, this is article number 2 of 4 water articles, and it shows the Water Department and the Commissioner's dedication to make sure that we continue to address the critical needs of our infrastructure, specifically our water and wastewater infrastructure, the wells being included in that. We need to make sure that not only do we have access to reservoir water, that we have access to good working wells so that we can make sure that you folks, the consumers of those products, meaning the water products, have the appropriate and good quality water that we all need. So with that, we urge your support. The Select Board as Water Commissioners vote unanimously in favor of this, as does, and I forgot to mention this at our last article, as does our Water and Wastewater Subcommittee.
Mr. Warwick for the FinCom.
Once again, the Finance Committee unanimously supports Article 13 by a vote of 8-0. Mile Lane and Browns Well, the Miles Lane and Browns Well are the 2 oldest drinking water wells in the town at 70 and 82 years respectively. Physical inspection shows that they're in failing condition, deteriorating wellheads, and resulting in reduced output. With your approval here this evening, we'll be able to move forward with the design and construction of upgrades to the wells and the associated wellheads. It'll help prevent a possible collapse and failure down the road. This needs to be addressed pretty immediately because delay will only increase the risk of failure. Finance Committee requests and recommends your approval, your support of this critical project. Thank you.
Any comments or questions from the audience? If not, we'll go to a vote. This requires a 2/3 majority because it is a borrowing article. If you are in favor of the motion, vote 1. If you're opposed to the motion, vote 2. Closing the voting. It passes by a 2/3 vote, 352 in favor, 14 against. We'll move to article number 14, Plover Hill Tank Rehabilitation. Mr. Nyland.
Right, thank you, Mr. Moderator. I, Carl Nyland, Select Board member, move 1, to appropriate the sum of $2,200,000 to survey, design, permit, and construct improvements to the town's Plover Hill water storage tank and any other improvements to the town's water system as determined necessary by the Water Department Asset Management Plan or system conditions, including the payment of cost incidental or related thereto, and 2, to raise this appropriation by authorizing the treasurer, with the approval of the Select Board, Board of Water Commissioners, to issue bonds or serial notes under the provisions of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44, as amended, or any other borrowing authority.
Got a second?
So, as you can see in the report, this is a replacement of a second wastewater tank in town. You may remember one at Town Hill that was replaced some time ago. The rehabilitation, I should say, of an existing tank. You may know that these water tanks are a critical part of our water distribution system. This particular tank is a 500,000-gallon tank. If you're interested in the size, it was last rehabilitated in 2003. And over the course of 20 years, there are serious degradations that can occur. It needs to have regular maintenance. It's not simply a painting project. It involves scraping the tank and then painting it, significant undertaking, and needs to be done in order to maintain the ongoing health of that tank. So the Select Board was 5-0 in favor.
Mr. Bork again from the Finance Committee.
The Finance Committee unanimously supports Article 14 by a vote of 8-0. As Carl said, all the tanks, water tanks in town are monitored on a regular basis. Plover Hill tank was last done over 20 years ago. Recent inspections show that the coatings are wearing thin and some of the bolts are getting rusty. It's probably particularly susceptible to increased wear and tear due to its proximity and exposure to the salt air. Essential repairs and painting, both the inside and outside, would be done, and it'd be good for probably at least another 20 years. So we're requesting your approval again of Article 14. Thank you.
Any comments or questions from the room? If not, we'll go to a vote. It's a 2/3 majority. Vote 1 if you support the motion. Vote 2 if you oppose the motion. Closing the voting. This passes a 2/3 vote, 332 to 27. We'll move to Article 15. Article 15 is wastewater plant upgrades. Mr. Nyland.
I, Carl Nyland, Select Board member, move 1, to appropriate the sum of $3 million to survey, design, permit, and construct improvements to the town's wastewater treatment plant, electrical and pumping systems, and any other improvements to the town's wastewater system as determined necessary by the wastewater department asset management plan or system conditions, including the payment of costs incidental or related thereto, and 2, to raise this appropriation by authorizing the treasurer, with the approval of the Select Board, Board of Sewer Commissioners, to issue bonds or serial notes under the provisions of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44, as amended, or any other borrowing authority.
Is there a second?
So this, as you can see again from the description, is a series of continuing upgrades, necessary upgrades to the wastewater plant. As some of you may know, that plant was originally built in the 1950s. A number of upgrades were done in the 1970s. This particular article relates to upgrade to the electrical system, which is original to the 1970s, as well as some of the pumps. As I'm sure you appreciate, this facility operates 24/7. Those pumps need to keep running. They get a lot of wear and tear. They need to be replaced periodically. So this would allow these planned improvements to go forward. The Select Board was 5-0 in favor of this.
Mr. Bork for the FinCom.
The Finance Committee supports Article 15 unanimously by a vote of 8-0. This funding will allow the ongoing and overdue upgrades to continue into the next phase at the wastewater treatment plant. As Carl said, the wastewater treatment plant is located on Fowler's Lane. It's a 24/7 operation. And the primary, I guess it's more, most of this is maintenance oriented. It's primarily electrical systems, an emergency generator, and pumping system improvements. The current equipment is past its useful life. This funding will provide for the necessary maintenance. I think the critical thing I'd like to point out is that the proximity of this wastewater treatment plant it's very close to the marsh, the creek, and the clam beds. Failure would be catastrophic to both the environment and the clamming industry, which is a key component of our local economy. So the Finance Committee requests and recommends your support of Article 15. Thank you.
Any comments or questions from the room? If not,
Question there.
I'm sorry. Mr. Savoy?
Ken Savoy, Old England Road. So we've just approved approximately $7 million in upgrades to our water and wastewater systems. What is the impact of that now on our ratepayers? Because all of this will be borne by the townspeople. Has that been determined, and could you share that information with us?
Perhaps Vicki Hellman, our wastewater director, could address that?
Good evening. I'm Vicki Hellman, Water Wastewater Director. These projects have all been planned. We have completed asset management plans for both departments, and for the past 5 or 6 years, we have had 2 public hearings every year, 4, 5, or 6 years before the board to put forth all these projects and a funding plan. So there have been continuous rate increases that I'm sure you're very well aware of that have been put in place in order to build the funding capacity to pay for these projects. So it has been being built into the rates and has been planned for and described at length at all the public hearings for the budgets and the rates.
Thank you, Vicki. Any other comments or questions?
So this will result in a 45% increase in water rates over the next 5 years. So again, this is bad capital management planning on the part of the FinCom board. And so you could see your water rates, think 45% more than what you're paying today over the next 5 years because we have ignored these issues for so long in this town. So you're gonna get ready to open your wallet and pay for this.
So are you speaking for or against this article? I'm always a little... I'm always a little confused, Paul. Any other comments or questions? Yes, Ms. Britt.
Yeah, Carolyn Britt, One Shack Bark Woods. As somebody who lives with a 24/7 view of the outflow of the waste treatment plant, I can tell you that any upgrade, this is extremely necessary. This is the only discharge in a salt marsh in the entirety of Massachusetts, and certainly the only one in an area of critical environmental concern. This is not an option. This is one of those things we have to pay for. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Hearing and seeing none, we'll move to a vote. This is a 2/3 majority. If you are in favor of the motion for the borrowing, press 1. If you are opposed, press 2. Close the voting. On a vote of 371 to 25, it passes the 2/3 majority. Before we leave this, I'd comment to Vicki Hellman, our water wastewater director. Christmas morning couldn't be a happier time than having passed these 4 articles for her department. So we'll move on to... We'll move on to Article 16, changes in our leash law. Recognize Charlie Sapitsky from the Select Board.
I, Charles Sapitsky, Select Board Member, move to amend Chapter 109 of the General Bylaws of the town as set forth in Article 16 of the warrant for this town meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, recently the town entered into a regional animal control agreement with Rowley, Boxford, Newbury, and ourselves, with headquarters at our animal control shelter on Fowler's Lane. This article establishes policies and procedures governing the operation of the regional system. The first section sets fees of $50 for leash law violations and $40 for pickup and impoundment fees per day for dogs. The second part deals with the procedures of the release of impounded dogs picked up by the town. And the third outlines a procedure for dogs, cats, or domesticated animals voluntarily surrendered to the town by a medically incapacitated person or an incarcerated owner. This procedure gives the animal control officer flexibility to accommodate needs of the animal, as well as reducing the financial liability of the town. These procedures are recommended by the police chief, and the select board recommends them 5-0.
Thank you. Mr. Chambers for the FinCom.
Good evening, and thank you for being here. I'm Bob Chambers, and I live on Candlewood Road. Charlie just actually hit all the major points, so I only have a little bit more to put in here, and I have a little bit of data for you to add to this, so you get a kind of an idea about the amount of work that is being done. But I think it's actually a wonderful thing that we have such a very functioning department. So I talked to Tegan Dolan of the department, and he gave me some information about the activity in the last calendar year. And there were 35 field returns. This means that the dogs were returned to their homes because they were easily identified and could be returned home, and there was really no need to put them into the shelter. Okay? Into the shelter, though, intakes, there were 12 dogs, 2 cats, and 1 ferret. And incidentally, okay, the ferret was very happy with the arrangement there and gave it a 4-star recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Any comments or questions from the floor? Hearing none, seeing none. I'm sorry. Again, if you intend to speak, if you have an urge to speak, come down, be near the microphone, even if it's just a question.
This is a question. Bill Graham, 45 East Street. I am a dog owner. My question relates to, I think the intent of this, I hope, is related to stray dogs straying away from home. There are areas within Ipswich, Nichols Field, Cranes Turnoff, where dogs are off leash with their owners. Does this pertain to that? Does this outlaw all that?
No. No.
Because the way it reads, it says there's no...
I would defer to the police chief relative to that. I think there's some leash-free zones, but... Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to defer to the police chief. He enforces the bylaw, and he can probably give the best answer.
Hi, no, so this doesn't change any of the existing leash areas or non-leash areas that are permitted by private property owners. And also any of the animal control staff still has the ability to just warn somebody if they're off leash somewhere. This is more about when we do find a lost or abandoned animal, to be able to get the mechanism to get that into the private sector and adopt it out, as opposed to having us maintain.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Before we go to a vote on this, I'll remind everyone that there was a printing error in the Finance Committee report relative to Articles 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. It was described that they needed a 2/3 majority. That was in error. This is a simple majority for those articles. So on this article, if you're in favor of the motion, press 1. If you're opposed, press 2. close the voting. By a simple majority, it passes 339 to 36. Article 17, specialized stretch code. Mr. Nyland.
I, Carl Nyland, Select Board Member, move to amend Section 199 of the general bylaws of the town as set forth in Article 17 of the warrant for this town meeting.
Second? Do we have a second?
second.
Thank you. Thank you.
We have a second. Please.
Right. Can we move to the first slide? Thank you. So this article concerns the adoption of what's called the Specialized Stretch Energy Code, which is an improved energy efficient version of the state building code. It is concerned with implementing or enforcing these for new buildings, for the improved efficiency of buildings, for the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions from those buildings, and for the realization of cost savings that come along with those. Because it applies to new buildings, it does not apply to any form of renovation, addition, or historic buildings. Go to the next slide. Its purpose is fundamentally to advance the climate actions set both at a state and local level. In particular, at the state level, to help the state to achieve the net zero goals we've set by 2050, and locally to help us achieve the goals set under our zero carbon initiative, which looks to have us decarbonize municipal operations by the year 2040. Climate change is real. I hope that is not shocking or surprising to anyone, and it is having serious impacts on this town. On the slide are 3 examples of projects we will be undertaking in the next couple of years, including the road raising of 2 roads and the relocation of the Wharf Pump Station, which pumps 100% of the wastewater from the town right past the wharf. Those projects carry with them a total cost of about $40 million. And those projects are only being done because of the effects of storm surge and sea level rise due to climate change. We can go to the next slide. Now, the reason we're focusing on buildings is because buildings are a significant contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. Globally and locally, about 30% of emissions come from buildings. The primary way we control how buildings do that is through the building code. Thus, the changes are being made. The idea here is to capture and improve those buildings at the time it is cheapest and easiest to do so, when they are constructed, so that over time, as new buildings contribute more and more to the building portfolio, we don't make the problem worse. So we capture the new buildings as we build them. Next slide. Building codes, as you may know, been around for quite some time. They are fundamentally minimum standards set for how buildings are built, and they are really public health and safety measures. You can see some examples here on screen of some of the better known improvements to building codes that have made over the years. They are updated regularly, about on every 3-year cycle, and they include energy efficiency improvements that were made way back in the 1970s during the oil crisis. Next slide. So there are today 3 levels of building codes in Massachusetts. There is the base code, or so-called base code, which currently 50 communities are still part of. There is then the stretch code, which currently about 260 communities have adopted. Ipswich is one of those. We adopted this in 2018. The stretch code has been around since 2009. And then there is the specialized stretch code that's in front of you with this article. That number actually is a little outdated. I think the current tally is 42 communities have adopted that since it became available in January of 23. So you can see that the vast majority of cities and towns in Massachusetts have adopted and continue to adopt either the stretch or specialized code. Next slide. So the way this works is it sets standards for how buildings should operate. This is an example of the conditions set for residential construction, the majority of what we would be addressing. And it uses a performance-based approach, meaning it uses this concept of what's known as a HERS rating, Home Energy Rating System. You can think of it a little like the Energy Star rating you have for an appliance. It tells you how efficiently the building is performing. So if you construct an all-electric building, you need to meet the performance standard. The nice part of it is it allows the owner of the building, an architect, a builder, to determine the right mix of materials and labor practices to meet the standard. It doesn't prescribe exactly how to do it. If you can go back to that previous slide for 1 second. If you decide to still implement or install fossil systems, which you can do under the specialized stretch code, there are some additional requirements, specifically to pre-wire for future electrification and to install solar arrays, if feasible, on the site. So one question on the next slide people ask about are costs. This is an example. If you can read it, unfortunately it's green and red colors, which aren't so legible on screen here, but what it shows is results from a cost analysis done by the Mass Department of Energy Resources that looked at the stretch code at the same HERS rating level required by specialized stretch code. So to achieve the same standard, it seemed appropriate to share it here. And essentially what it depicts is that if you see that on the green numbers, that is a cost savings, the red is a cost increase. So if you are building essentially to the specialized stretch code, this study says that you will actually save money as compared to not doing so. And the main reason for that is you are installing simpler and fewer systems, and that saves money. Last slide. So we've talked about the benefits of this measure to helping us achieve our state and local carbon reduction goals. There are benefits, you can see in the previous slide, to saving money at the time of construction, and there are unquestionably benefits on the operational side. These systems are much more efficient to operate, and they save significant money operationally for any building owner going forward. And of course, that's money you save every year as long as the building lasts. It allows us, buildings, to be sort of future-proofed, in that even if you decide not to electrify today, the systems will be there to do it into the future. And it also provides the opportunity to enhance revenue to the town in two ways. One, it will qualify the town for additional state grant funds. To date, we received about $500,000 in what's called Green Communities money. And if we pass the specialized stretch code, we will be eligible for even greater grants. More importantly, it creates new customers, new electric customers for our local municipal light plant. So rather than sending the money to the investor-owned utility, we will bring it here and enhancing our local revenues. So I urge you to support this article. The Select Board voted 2 in favor, 3 opposed.
Thank you, Carl. Ken Swenson, Finance Committee.
Ken Swenson, Limeberg Road, Finance Committee. Finance Committee voted 2 in favor and 6 against in supporting this article. In 2018, the town meeting voted to adopt the stretch code. The stretch code requires buildings to be more energy efficient. Most cities and towns in the Commonwealth have adopted the stretch code. There's no tax impact if the specialized stretch code is adopted. But if it is adopted, there is a fiscal impact on new building costs construction if fossil fuels are used. If we don't adopt this, there's no reason why builders could not use all electric heating if it is really more cost effective and provide a more cost effective operation going forward. Thank you.
School Committee did take a vote on this. Kate Elliott, School Committee.
Thank you. Kate Elliott, School Committee. I'm also the School Committee Liaison to the Climate Resiliency Committee. The School Committee supported this article 5-2, and I'm representing the majority vote. The 3 Ipswich boards a few years ago unanimously supported the net zero climate resolution from the Climate Resiliency that Carl mentioned. And the adoption of this specialized stretch code seems to align with that initiative and get Ipswich closer to the climate goals we agreed upon. Ipswich schools pride themselves on the sustainability initiatives we've achieved over the years, from students forging the path to eliminating single-use plastic bags to the district-wide sustainability policy we are currently working on this spring. Tireless efforts have gone into changing the culture in our schools to promote sustainability, and we are committed to building a green and sustainable building when we are re-invited into the Massachusetts School Building Authority pipeline. Any MSBA project must follow the Stretch Energy Code, and they give 3 incentive points to districts that strive to attain buildings that align with a specialized stretch code, which is the article before us currently. This translates to more reimbursement from the state for a new building project and a less expensive building for Ipswich. And this could possibly give the town a savings of a few $1 million, depending on the size of the school that we build. It's time for the town to not just say we promote climate action, but to actually take action, and adoption of the specialized stretch code helps us move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Since the votes from the various committees were split votes, I'm now giving an opportunity for the dissenting side of each of the committees to make a statement. So first we'll go to the select board.
Thank you,
Mr.
Mr.
Doe.
Moderator. Through you to the members. So the select board, in a 3-2 vote, asks that you oppose this proposal. To quote our own building commissioner at a very recent select board budget hearing, this proposal goes too far. Keep in mind that this proposal has impacts on private development, single homes, single families. And the reason why it goes too far is because it takes away the consumer's ability to choose and replaces it with an idea of false choice. What do I mean by that? So with this proposal, you have 2 options. You can do all electric, which a lot of people do, or you can go the route of fossil fuels. But if you do go down the route of fossil fuels, you have to pre-wire for all electric appliances. There's no guarantee that the pre-wiring that you do in today's construction, 30 years from now when you eventually renovate or do decide to go all electric, will match the existing technology of that time. And you have to put solar panels on the roof. Who determines the applicability of those solar panels has not been clarified. And to have to mandate that puts a significant cost burden on the person or people trying to do the right thing by coming to a community, investing into a community. And I think one of the biggest concerns the select board had is that we don't know what the economic development impact of this proposal will do. It was just offered January of 2023 by the state legislature as an option to adopt, so it's new. And of the 351 communities that have adopted this so far, only a small fraction have. So we don't know what the long-term economic development impacts could be by imposing these additional measures. And who does it affect? It affects Joe and Jane Citizen, who want to come to Ipswich, who spent months putting together budgets, building that dream home, coming to our community, raising a family, by putting that additional cost burden on them. It affects mom and dad, who decided in their retirement years to sell the family home and build their small retirement cottage. Consumers should have a choice at the end of the day. And it's my belief, and belief of others, I believe, that if we want to move in the right direction, we should be incentivizing. There's no question that we should be moving towards a greener path, but we need to be incentivizing. Local boards and officials and governments and board commissions need to be incentivizing these measures, not mandating them. So with a 3-2 vote by the select board, we urge that you oppose this article as presented. Maybe in the future, when we know more of its impacts, we can relook at this issue. Thank you.
Okay. I'm looking for the dissenting speaker.
Yes.
from the Finance Committee?
Yes. Thank you.
You're opposing the adoption of the specialized stretch?
Yes, I dissented to the FinCom's vote.
Okay.
Michael Shaw, Finance Committee. 3 issues the FinCom members opposed to Article 17 expressed concern were threefold. One was being on the unproven cutting edge, as it were, of change in the code. Second, the impact of the specialized stretch code on costs. And third, that all this will happen without the specialized code. I'm not persuaded by this rationale. First, Ipswich is not on the cutting edge. We're in the second tier on this. 43 localities in the Commonwealth have adopted a specialized stretch code. Smaller communities like Ipswich adopting a specialized code include Acton, Ashfield, Ashland, Carlisle, Chelmsford, Eastham, Hopkinton, Marion, Maynard, last night Newburyport, Sharon, Sherburne, Stowe, Swampscott, and West Tisbury, as well as Salem on the North Shore. Only 2 communities considering the specialized code refused, including Ipswich at the 2023 special town meeting. Ipswich is on the second tier of localities considering specialized code. We have experience for months among other communities with this code. Second, the specialized code is about requiring new buildings to decrease their negative impact on climate change. Refusing adoption of the stretch code to allegedly reduce costs to Ipswich residents is a short-sighted response. The Finance Committee is concerned about increases in both short and long-term costs. We are already paying for expenses flowing from climate change. We're paying right now. Ipswich currently faces up to $45 million in necessary capital investments related to climate change. Carl Nyland pointed this out. I don't need to repeat them. This is the waste transfer facility and so on, the road elevations. We're already paying for that. Second, recent researchers reported in the Nature Communications magazine found that climate change attributed costs of 185 extreme weather events from 2000 to 2019 to a total of $2.86 trillion. This is related to climate change spurred events. The costs range from a low of $24 billion in 2001 to the highest of $620 billion in 2008. The New York Times reported that before 2005, insurance industry losses never topped $50 billion a year. Now the insurance industry is struggling to adopt a new normal in which losses fueled by climate change average $100 billion a year. It's increased. You're paying that in your insurance. Finally, old habits die slowly. Despite urgings from the Planning Board to electrify the 68 new homes on in and around Linebrook Road that we all have driven by, the developer refused to do so.
Time, please.
Thank you. We will continue to pay. Projections that suggest that there's trillions of dollars ahead of us. We are paying for climate change. This is about seeking to reduce those costs and reduce climate change. I urge your support of this article.
Thank you. To the school committee, the school committee was not unanimous?
Yep. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Hi.
Please.
All right.
Go ahead.
Ready? Good evening. I'm Jenny Connolly, a member of the school committee. I'm speaking on behalf of the school committee members who voted no on the specialized stretch code warrant article. As homeowners and taxpayers, we must have the authority to find a balance between energy efficiency and our personal and town's financial limitations. The specialized stretch code does not allow for this balance. If Ipswich adopts this code, then it is mandatory that we comply with all of its standards regardless of the cost to the homeowners and taxpayers. The Massachusetts Building Authority, also known as the MSBA, offers a 3% reimbursement incentive to schools that meet the specialized stretch code standards. However, it is not required that the town in which the school resides opt into this code. It only requires that the school complies with the code. So again, a town does not need to opt into the specialized stretch code in order for schools to receive that state reimbursement. Opting into the specialized stretch code will force all schools built in Ipswich to meet its standards, which would increase the cost of school buildings. This financial burden would fall on the shoulders of the Ipswich taxpayers. However, if the town votes to not adopt the specialized stretch code, then we will have the flexibility to build as energy efficiently as possible, but in a financially responsible way. This warrant article summary, found in your town meeting report, reads the specialized stretch code applies only to new construction, in that the specialized stretch code does not apply to existing buildings or renovations of existing buildings or historic homes. When asked about these statements, DOER stated that, and I quote, "It is possible that the code would apply to existing buildings, renovations of existing buildings, or historic homes in the future. The fact is, the specialized stretch code is updated every 3 years. If the town adopts this code, we are mandated to comply with all of these changes. Regarding Ipswich's green community status, the specialized stretch code is not a requirement to maintain this status. Even with a no vote, Ipswich will remain a green community. Again, to quote DOER, if Ipswich does not opt in to the specialized stretch code, the town will not lose its green community status. We encourage you to vote no on this article. Let's not add another layer of ever-changing codes to our schools, buildings, and homes. We all want to be energy efficient, but we must have the authority to find a balance between energy efficiency and our financial limitations. Please vote no on this warrant article. Thank you.
Thank you. We've heard now from opposing speakers. I'm going to start with the pro microphone. I'm going to ask for someone from the Climate Resiliency Committee to be the first pro speaker, because they were the genesis of this article, and then we'll go pro con. So,
thank you. Thank you, Mike.
Please.
Mike Johnson. I'm the chair of the Climate Resiliency Committee. The primary reason that the state created these building energy codes is to, and the reason that we are asking you to adopt the specialized stretch code tonight, is to meet our climate goals and our commitments. The opponents of this article would have you believe that taking action on climate change is unnecessary and it will be too costly. And some have even suggested that climate change is not happening at all. The evidence of climate change is undeniable. Last year was the warmest year on record, and the last 10 years have been the warmest 10 years on record. Warming of the Gulf of Maine threatens iconic species like cod, salmon, and lobster. Rising CO2 concentrations also threaten soft-shell clam populations by acidifying marine waters, making it more difficult for them to grow shells. Warming the ocean has also caused about a foot of sea level rise in the last 150 years, and an additional foot of sea level rise is baked into the system already in the next 25 years, and we could see 3 or 4 more feet of additional sea level rise over the next 50 years. This has profound implications for a coastal community with a tidal river running through the downtown center. There's an old saying that if you find yourself in a hole, the first step is to stop digging. Our emissions are continuing to rise, and we're still digging this hole. Regarding the claims of the specialized stretch code that will increase the cost of building new homes, you saw in Mr. Nyland's presentation and also in the provided handout tonight that an all-electric home can be cheaper to build, and it's definitely cheaper to operate. For people worried about adopting this building code will increase costs, as Mr. Nyland and Mr. Schaffeth earlier said, that we're already paying for the cost of climate change. And they cited the 3 projects, Jeffries Neck Road, Argilla Road raising, and relocating the town wharf as examples. And these projects are only being done for one reason, and that's to address climate change, flooding from climate change and sea level rise. And we're doing this not in 50 or 100 years from now, but we're doing it today. And these projects will cost over $40 million, and you, the taxpayers, will be picking up some of these costs. This change in the building code may be one of the cheapest investments we ever make on climate change. We have the technology now to make the changes needed. We just need the will to do so. Pretending that we don't have a responsibility to change while simultaneously facing real and substantial cost to climate change is not a defensible position to take. Please vote to support this modest but important change in our building codes. If not for ourselves, for our children and grandchildren. Thank you.
Mr. Fierro.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Ben Fierro, North Ridge Road. I urge town meeting to again reject the adoption of this specialized opt-in stretch energy code as you did last fall. Let me begin by stating two things that I believe. First, I believe we do...
Mr. Moderator, I believe the speaker is a paid lobbyist for the Home Builders Association and has not identified himself.
My understanding is that he is not representing that group.
I hope this isn't taken away from my time, Mr. Moderator.
We're going to
If Mr.
reset
Swaff
his
had given
time.
me the opportunity, I would have mentioned that at the conclusion of my remarks.
Okay. Reset his time and start again, please.
Thank you so much. And yes, I do represent the home building industry in Massachusetts. I am not here representing them. They're not paying me tonight. I am speaking solely as a citizen in Ipswich, but someone who does know much about this issue. So as I begin again, let me state two things that I believe. First, I believe we do have a climate crisis. It is a global crisis, it's a national crisis, and it is one for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. But the other thing that I believe, and I know, is that we have a housing crisis, particularly here in Massachusetts, and yes, here in the town of Ipswich. You know, if you're fortunate to be a homeowner, terrific. But if you rent a house in Ipswich or you have an apartment and you're looking for a home, try to find a house built since 1990 under $1 million. You won't find it. Anything that adds to the cost of housing, anything that makes it less affordable, means that my daughter and my son can't come back and live in this town. Now, you heard a lot about the building codes. Let me just make a couple of points up front here. Yes, Massachusetts has actually 3 codes, right? We have a base code, the stretch energy code, and the specialized code. Something you need to understand. The base code is promulgated by the Board of Building Regulations and Standards. These are architects and engineers that produce the base code. By law, they are required to consider the cost on construction of adopting any of these codes. The specialized code, the stretch code, is promulgated by the Department of Energy Resources. They are not required to consider the cost. Their mission is solely to address the issue of greenhouse gas emissions, which of course is a laudatory goal, but without consideration of cost. Now, you saw some statistics regarding costs. And yes, the DOER, as it's called, Department of Energy Resources, put out a report. It was issued in February of 2022, based upon costs in 2021, that showed the additional cost to construction. And it varied. Something like a small office building, the additional cost would be 3.1 to 4.5%. The additional cost on a small 2,100 square foot single-family home was approximately $7,000 or maybe to $11,000, although they offset that with the rebate on your heat pump. And by the way, I'm all for heat pumps. My home, we use a heat pump. We also have a propane stove and a propane fireplace, which under the specialized code would be considered a mixed fuel building or home and would require that I wire for electric vehicle charging and have solar panels. Now, these costs estimated by the DOER were again in 2021. We all know that this is now 2024. Costs are far greater today, particularly in construction, than they were then. Lastly, I'll leave you with this. It is factually true that the specialized code applies only to new construction. But just as you will hear, the stretch energy code adopted in 2018 here in Ipswich only applied to new construction, was amended to apply to existing homes. That certainly could occur here under the specialized code. Thank you for your attention.
Yes, sir.
John Doonan, Topsfield Road. I'm here on behalf of the Affordable Housing Partnership. The Affordable Housing Partnership is the only group here that their sole mandate is affordable housing. We took a vote on this after studying it for over a year, both individually and as a group, and we voted unanimously to support this. And we don't agree unanimously on anything. And now, having found out the Bruins score, I'm going to stop. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Kelly.
Yeah, Dan Kelly, 6 North Main Street. I've been up here a bit, but I'm a lawyer. I retired 2 years ago. For 40 years, I practiced in the area of regulatory law. So I know a bit about regulations and how they can affect the community. So following Mr. Fierro, I want to tell you that the only study that's out there is a June 2023 study which looked at not just the specialized stretch code, but the stretch code itself, which, as Mr. Fierro just said, has changed since 2018 to 2023 to 2024. And that study found that for an average home, the construction of a new home, by adopting this stretch code and the specialized stretch code and the standards that it now mandate, it's an additional approximately $10,000 to $23,000. And that $23,000 per home is in instances where somebody decides when they're building a new home that they want to put a gas stove in, or they want a gas propane tank, or they want a fireplace. If you have any kind of fossil fuel appliance that you want to use, your costs are going to be at least $23,000 according to this MIT study, which is unrefuted. And the MIT study didn't include the cost of the solar panels that you have to put on the roof unless your house is in 90% shade. So the average cost of a solar panel with the rebates is about $20,000. So that's $43,000 a new homeowner is going to have to pay if, in fact, this specialized stretch code is adopted and somebody wants to construct a new home and put a gas fireplace, or decides to use gas instead of electric, which a lot of people make that decision. We are in favor of the consumer, your son or daughter wants to build a home, having the choice with regard to energy efficiency. As I will argue when I address the stretch code, the base code already has efficiencies plugged into it. The town of Essex, right next door, last year, threw out the stretch code. They said, forget the specialized stretch code, forget the stretch code. Forget the stretch code, because it's too onerous. It's too onerous a burden. They went back to the base code. And the standards associated with the stretch code and the specialized stretch code are the same, So I urge you to reject this.
Before I recognize the next speaker, as I mentioned earlier, we are constrained to discontinue debate at 11 o'clock, or at least to take up any new motions past 11. It appears that we're probably going to break through the 11 o'clock limit, so I'm entertaining a motion from Mr. Fay.
I move that we continue town meeting until 11:30.
It's moved and seconded. Any comments or questions? Hearing none on the motion made to allow debate to continue to 11:30. If you are in favor of 11:30, press 1. If you are opposed, press 2. So we'll open the voting. I don't think we need a slide. I think it's simple enough. So if you're in favor of continuing debate to 11:30, press 1. If you're not in favor, press 2. There's murmuring, but I hear no question. We'll close the voting. we'll continue our debate until, we'll continue our meeting until 11:30. Mr. Gardner.
Carl Gardner, 9 Woods Lane. I want to just offer a few thoughts from my perspective in residential construction, which is what my primary experience is. Ipswich has had the stretch code in place for about 5 years now, and was there a learning curve? Yes. Is it complicated at first? Yes. Did it require education of both builders as well as homeowners and inspectors? Absolutely. But my conclusion is that rather than taking away consumer choices, it empowers the consumer to choose something that frees them of fossil fuels and the volatile costs associated with those fuels. What I mean is you can have air conditioning and heating in one system. It's a very flexible system when it's electric-based, air source heat pumps or even ground source heat pumps. But it's an extremely flexible system. And as you learn more about it and you put it in application, you find that it's really user-friendly and very cost-effective. There are also built-in incentives, substantial financial incentives to go that route. So the costs are offset to a certain degree in a significant way in the beginning of construction. Also, the product manufacturers and building material suppliers are ramping up their product selections and knowledge about various assemblies to make the building envelope more effective and more energy efficient. There's no absolute requirement that you put solar panels on the roof under this scenario. You have to at least prep for them, and you have to prep for an EV vehicle, which is a fairly simple process and often a very wise thing to do at that stage of construction. One thing I would request that the community look into, with or without this code in place, is that they consider a community solar installation probably out at the former transfer station location at
You're
the end of
straying,
South
Carl.
Fall Road.
You're straying a bit.
Because that would offset the cost. If people can participate in an off-site solar array, they would be able to accomplish even more in terms of cost savings than if that was facilitated by the
I
electric
hear you,
department.
but you're straying a bit.
Yeah, whatever. Thank you.
Ed Marsh, Woods Lane. Serious question, why are we talking about this? This was decided last year. The answer was no, but a couple people decided that they were smarter than the rest of us and they wanted to bring this back up. So here we are again, but how many mulligans are they going to get? The select board opposed it. The finance committee opposed it. You've heard a lot tonight about the important financial reasons. We're going to get grants. It's not really going to cost you anymore. Every other town has done it. And most importantly, you've heard repeatedly that it's only for new construction, not for additions or renovations. I'm guessing that your memory of the special town meeting held on October 16, 2018, when we passed the stretch code, is probably as fuzzy as mine. So I made a quick highlight reel. We're going to hear from the moderator, the select board, the town manager, and the finance committee.
16, the Stretch Energy Code. Mr. Whitmore. I move that the town of Ipswich accept the Stretch Energy Code, 780 CMR State Building Code, 9th edition. Kevin Murphy, Finance Community, and if we are a green community, 15 AA Stretch Energy Code, including future additions, amendments or modifications thereto, with an effective date of January 1, 2019. Without approving this tonight, we cannot become a green community, and if we are a green community, it allows us to
Mr.
apply
Marsh,
for additional state grants.
Mr. Marsh, most of us can't hear what that is all about. Could you summarize it in your own words?
Yeah, so the select board told us, don't worry. It's only new construction. We have to do it because every other town's done it. We're going to get a ton of money, and it doesn't apply to additions or renovations. The town manager said, oh, every other town is doing this, and it doesn't apply to additions or renovations. It's only new construction. Finance committee got up and said, this doesn't apply to additions or renovations. It's only new construction. And what are we hearing tonight? We need to do it because every other town has done it. We're going to get all this free money because of it. And don't worry, it doesn't apply to additions and renovations. It's only new construction. Until, I guarantee you, just as the sun is going to rise tomorrow morning, it will apply to additions and renovations. We have people that are worried about affordable housing to the point that our town meeting, in the annual town meeting in 2022, in Article 11, we changed our bylaws to no longer require the town manager to live in town at the outset of their term. Paying them $185,000 a year, we decided that it wasn't enough to allow somebody to live in Ipswich. This will raise the prices of houses, will raise the price of construction, it will raise the price of living here. I urge you to vote no.
Thank you. Once more, I'm going to ask again for the indulgence of the meeting, that we'll have another pro, another con, and then I'm going to take a sense of the meeting as to whether they want to continue or stop debate.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'll be brief. My name is Charles Whitten. I live at 263 Argilla Road. Electric is better for the environment and climate resiliency today. The town electric utility procures a great deal of carbon-neutral electricity now. I'm a commercial real estate developer. During a Boston gas moratorium, I built a 50,000 square foot all-electric office building. It didn't break my budget. I didn't get utility cost complaints or comfort complaints from my tenants, and I streamlined the process by having fewer subcontractors. It was a seamless process for me and didn't cost me more than the alternative gas facilities. Thank you.
We have a speaker.
It's appropriate. It's just Joni and I that are left on this side. We can finish it up so we don't have to choose between the two of us that have really good points. I'm going to keep mine relatively short.
I'm going to stick with what I said earlier.
I'm going to make mine really quick. I agree with Ed.
You could share your 3 minutes with Joni if you wish.
I will happily do that with Joni.
So please.
My name's Nate Hockenberry, 2 Riverside Drive. I'm going to agree with Ed. We heard no new construction. We heard that before, and now it's on renovations. We're going to have another article coming up that we were told that wouldn't be on renovations. My wife and I have been trying to build a house in this town for years. Not build, renovate a house. A very small, modest 1,300 square foot house. 7 years of permitting. And every time we think we have it, we get shut down. You know how much more this is going to cost us to build this house? Because we live in a house that was built in 1965. We might as well put the whole house in a dumpster and start fresh. I'm a builder, I'm a remodeler. You're going to tell me it doesn't cost more to put wire in a building that you're not going to use? You're going to tell me that that's going to future-proof it when we saw on the slide that wiring was updated as part of this requirement previously? So then it's not going to be future-proof. And what are we going to do with all those solar panels that go in the trash? That doesn't count towards our greenhouse? It's not about whether we want greenhouse gases or not. We want affordable, buildable houses, and we need them now.
And you're relinquishing the remainder of your time to Ms. Sofrin. Ms. Sofrin.
Joni Sofrin, Agawam Village, and I thank you for allowing me a minute or so. My issue is affordable housing. As we all know, it is a crisis nationwide and very much so in our own town. My concern and my heart goes out to younger folks who may want to build an addition for an elderly parent or grandparent, and by doing this, the costs that are going to be incurred to meet these qualifications could possibly make it unattainable to do that, to provide for their family. So affordable housing is something that is deep in my head, and I just would urge you all to think about those kinds of costs going on the homeowner's shoulders. I would urge you, please, to vote no on this. Thank you.
Thank you. As I said, I'm going to ask for a sense of the meeting as to which...
Mr. Moderator, I was less than 3 minutes, and this lady is...
No.
I was less than 3 minutes. We had one more supporter to speak.
I indicated earlier that I would ask for a sense of the meeting as to whether they wish to continue debate or wish to stop debate. So I've written it down this time so as not to confuse myself. If you wish to stop debate, vote 1. If you wish to continue debate, vote 2. So again, if you wish to stop debate, vote 1. If you wish to continue debate, vote 2. Please vote. As soon as you see the tally board, you can start voting. We'll close the voting. 335 say stop debate, so we'll move to a vote on the question. So on the motion made to replace our general bylaws, if you're in favor of the motion, vote 1. If you're opposed to the motion, vote 2. Close the vote. So on the motion, it's a simple majority. The motion fails. Article 18, citizens petition, repeal of the stretch code. Again, the printing error in the Finance Committee document is noted. This is a simple majority vote. I ask Mr. Kelly, who initiated the citizens petition, to make the motion. And again, I see people leaving the room. Remember, we're trying to keep a quorum of 200 so that we can finish the meeting. Please stay if you can. Mr. Kelly.
Yes, Mr. Moderator. I, Daniel Kelly of 6 North Main Street, move that Chapter 199 of the Ipswich bylaws be repealed effective immediately. I'm prepared to defend that.
We have a second. Mr. Kelly, you have 5 minutes.
Could you put my slides up, please? And could you advance, please? Advance. This is the slide that Ed Marsh was talking about for the stretch code in 2018. Does not apply to additions and renovations. That's what we were told. That's what we were told. In 2023, they made it applicable to additions and renovations. They also changed the ratings that are necessary in order to make those additions and renovations. And can we advance the slides, please? Keep going, 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 keep going. All right, turning it over to Matt Cummings, an actual architect who can talk about the negative effects the stretch code has and why, like the town of Essex, we should go back to the base code.
Hi, everybody. Matthew Cummings, Central Street. I'm in Ipswich here in town. I've been in town for quite a bit of... Oh, Matthew Cummings. I'm a licensed architect. I live in Ipswich, and I have a little nice firm, and I enjoy myself, except for lately. So this code got changed last January, and it affects additions and renovations. They told us it wouldn't. They slid it in. I just want to ask a simple question. How many people here live in a single-family home? Raise the hand, please. Yeah. Watch this. Can you go to the next slide? So if you'd like to add an addition that's 1,000 square feet or renovate 1,000 square feet within your house, you need to hire a HERS rater. A HERS rater is somebody who does blower door tests, and you have to have special installations in windows and heating systems. So what is 1,000 square feet? Can you go to the next slide? 1,000 square feet can be as simple as a 19 square foot addition that's 2 stories with the basement. How big is that? That might be from me to the nice builder fella over here. 2 stories, that's it with the basement. That's 1,000 square feet. What's 1,000 square feet? Could be a mudroom addition with the attic renovation. If that happens, your whole house has to be torn apart. The windows need to come out, the plaster needs to come out, your heating system's no good. Even if you met the building code like 4 years ago, windows won't work, gotta rip them all out. I've gone through it 20 times in the past year with HERS raters. Can't get them to work. 65% of the architects from the AIA, American Institute of Architects, say, we can't meet this code. I have to turn away 50% of my potential clients every week and tell them like this, man, you will not be able to do your project. I turned somebody away in Byfield this week. I turned somebody away in Georgetown last week. It's not nice. Go to the next slide. Go to the next one if you don't mind. If you have a Cape house and you want to renovate your basement, it's 1,000 square feet, your whole existing house has to be torn apart. It's fact. Go to the next one. You have a Cape house, you want to put a second floor in it, maybe just renovated the first floor. Kitchens, bathrooms, no good anymore. Have to rip it out. Maybe put a heating system in. Maybe did put the heat pumps in. They're not efficient enough, got to rip them out. Go to the next one. There could be a nice, beautiful, big house. Maybe it's a historic house, and they want to add 1,000 square feet to a 5,000 square foot house. They need to remove all the windows, all the plaster, re-insulate, change the heating system, and it's over 1,000 square foot home. Maybe you just want to finish 1,000 square feet of your basement, or maybe 500 square feet of your basement and 500 square feet of your attic. When I mean renovate, by the way, I don't even mean plastered walls. I mean you just want to heat a section of your basement. You have a ranch house. Anybody know who Campanelli is? Yeah, got to tear those ones down. You can't even renovate them because you can't insulate the floor. It's a slab on grade. Go to the next one. Maybe you got a little Cape house. You want to put an addition on the back. Forget about that. Go then, yeah. Historic houses. Historic houses are exempt, right? Well, here's the problem they made. What they said was, you can hire a HERS rater for additions. This is the crux of the problem. I'll make sure I don't want to miss this. But they never bothered to ask the HERS raters whether they can HERS rate additions, and they cannot. Their license won't let them, and their program won't let them. So they have to take the addition and they have to include the house. So if you have a house on High Street or East Street, and you add 1,000 square feet to it, you have to HERS rate your historic house from 1680? I don't think so. Go to the next one. Those houses, forget it. I'll never get a phone call to renovate those properly again. Approximately a third of the houses in Ipswich are older than, okay, thank you very much.
Which side
Is there someone on the pro side?
Well, I'm on the pro side, but he was on, you were against the repeal?
I'm sorry,
Or
ma'am.
for the repeal?
Start over?
I believe this is supposed to be against the repeal on this side, but that was just spoken as a pro
No,
for
the
the
motion is to repeal.
repeal the stretch code. Or they were in support of appealing the stretch code, but
The
this
motion is to repeal the stretch code.
I
If you were-
I understand.
Let me finish. If you wish to repeal the stretch code, if I made a mistake, these gentlemen should have been speaking from the other side.
Thank
If-
you.
If you agree with these gentlemen, you should be speaking from that side. If you don't agree with them, speak from this side, and vice versa. So,
Right,
But
I'm
before-
against
but be-
repealing the
but-
stretch code. This says con.
let me speak. But before we do that, the tradition is that we hear from the boards. So let me poll the boards. Select board.
Mr. Moderator? Again, Carl Nyland from the Select Board. I guess a couple of points that I would sort of follow on from the presentation. Maybe most importantly, well, I guess the first thing I'll say is it is true that building codes, as pointed out by everyone, are updated periodically. Right? This is the nature of building codes, that they need to keep up with labor practices and improvements in materials. We have the option with the stretch code and the specialized stretch code that if ever what we've been told to fear in the future comes to pass, we have the option to opt out. That seems like a simple remedy and should alleviate concern about what might happen in the future. We've heard anecdotes about the horrors that the stretch code will deliver onto the town. Yeah, what have you experienced? We asked for data to back up some of the comments just made. We've received none to back up any of the claims that building would grind to a halt in this town. So I wanted to look at what the data on our permits in town says. So I went and researched the permitting system over the course of the past 10 years. And you might be interested to know that from 2013 to 2018, which is the last year before the stretch code went into place, that's 6 years, there were 78 permits for either new construction or major renovations. 78. From 2019 to 2023, that's a 5-year period after the stretch code went into place, there were 105. So building didn't go down, building went up. So we've also seen the cost studies. I shared one of them that the Mass DOER did to look at the cost of construction. And I would just reiterate that that finding showed that the cost of construction can be, oftentimes is the same or less than the cost of not electrifying. And again, the simple reason is, and I think some of the other speakers commented on this, is fewer systems and simpler systems are installed that cost less money. I'd also point out, as probably most people know, there are significant incentives available from the federal government, state government, and from our own town to help subsidize any of the upfront costs associated with implementing any of these systems. And there's more money now to do that than there probably ever will be. So if ever there were a time to pursue some of these, now would be the time to do it. On top of that, then you reap the benefits, which everyone has acknowledged, of the significant operational cost savings that come. Even the study that Mr. Kelly cited from the Home Builders Association, they acknowledge the significant cost savings operationally that happen with electrified systems. So I'd simply ask you to think about whether at this time in our history...
Time.
I guess I'll stop there.
I would move that we have a call to vote at this time because we have 4 more articles and you extended the meeting to 11:30, which leaves no time for those. So please, let's have a call to vote.
The comment is well taken. I'm going to entertain two more speakers. Going to ask. I'm going to ask that they speak for no more than 2 minutes because there isn't. Please.
I'm not going to waste your time. I just felt that maybe we needed to change the dynamic of the type of person that was down here. I am a younger person that a lot of people are speaking about. I'm not very young, but I also have very young children. And I keep hearing this conversation about people building additions or renovating their homes. And what I believe is that change requires sacrifice. And a lot of people of my generation and the younger generations believe that too. I taught in the high school and I heard a lot of young people who feel hopeless about the future of the climate and they don't think about their future at all. And so when these kind of debates go back and forth about the cost of building or the cost of building a new home, which seems completely unfeasible to anybody in Ipswich anyway, unless you have $2 million to buy a plot of land, the conversation just seems to be missing the point, which is that change needs to be made. And a quick kind of metaphor for you would be like, we used to put asbestos into buildings, and that turned out to be really bad for us, and now we need to remove it. And if you are trying to build it in a building that has asbestos, you need to pay the cost to remove it so that we don't get cancer and die. So we need to make changes, and there will be sacrifices, and sometimes it will cost money, and sometimes you can't build a 1,000-foot renovation on your house, and that sucks, but.
Thank you. One more speaker, and as you can tell by the mood of the meeting,
No problem.
if you can be succinct.
So I'm the face. I'm the face that you're looking at. I love the world. I love the earth. I love the nature. I love all of it. I love my kids. I love my wife. I love my in-laws. I love my parents.
How do you feel
I
about
got
how do you feel about this
1,300
article?
I have 1,300 square feet to try to fit all of those people in a single-family home. You say it doesn't add, it does. How can you sit here and say requiring these systems doesn't add? If it didn't, it wouldn't need to be a requirement. Builders would opt in. I do it for a living. You want to save the environment? Let's stop throwing stuff away that works. That's how we save the environment. Stop making new stuff to throw that away in 10 to 15 years when we're all standing here having this conversation. Nobody's talking about the new gigantic homes. We're talking about these old, historic, beautiful homes that make Ipswich. Can't change any of those when this goes through. I'm talking a 1965, very basic single-family home. 1,300 square feet at that time seemed very reasonable. Now, I urge any of you to go spend $1 million on 1,300 square feet, because you're not going to. You won't move to Ipswich. And those building numbers are flawed. You can't count the amount of building that has happened during the COVID boom and compare that to 2008 when we were in a depression. That's what they'll do with these numbers, and they will change them again.
I'm asking now for a vote to stop debate. If you have a notion to stop the debate, press 1. If you have a notion to continue debate, push 2.
Was I correct in you saying that you would take 2 more comments on each side? Was I was not.
Which I believe I did. If I said that, I said that incorrectly. On the.
Maybe you said it. Is that what we're saying? I mean, just because
I'm
there's
asking
not
you
2
to
people on
vote
that side doesn't
on
mean that 2
to
people
stop
on this side
debate
shouldn't get to speak.
by pressing number 1, or to continue debate by pressing number 2. And I'm sorry to disappoint. Number 1, to stop debate. Number 2, to continue debate.
Can I just ask, why is it that you can only hear from an architect that supports the one side and you can't hear from an architect that supports the other side? So it's a one-sided
We're
debate
done.
then?
We have a vote of 310 in the room who wish to stop debate and 19 who wish to continue debate. So we'll move on to the next article.
Could I make a quick comment, please?
No, you cannot.
It's
We're done.
it's
We're done with
very-
article. We're done with
I've got a very
article.
important piece of information. If
I'm sorry.
Ipswich,
We're moving to a vote on
if
Article
Ipswich-
18. I'm sorry, sir. You're out of order. No. I'm asking now to vote on the motion to repeal the stretch code. So if you're in favor of the motion to repeal the stretch code, press 1. If you're against a repeal, vote 2. The motion to repeal fails on a simple majority. Article 19, another citizen's petition by Mr. Kelly. Mr. Kelly, you should be at that microphone.
I, Daniel Kelly of 6 North Main Street, move that Chapter 156 of the Ipswich bylaws be repealed effective immediately. I'm going to amend that to move that it be postponed indefinitely.
So we have a motion for Mr. Kelly to indefinitely postpone this article. Is there a second? And we have a second. If you're in favor of indefinite postponement, which means you should vote number 1. If you are not in favor of indefinite postponement, vote number 2. We'll start taking your votes now. You're voting to indefinitely postpone this article, which means that if that motion to indefinitely postpone passes, we go to the next article. So, vote 1 if you're in favor of indefinite postponement, vote 2 if you're not in favor of indefinite postponement. Okay. We'll record the vote now. 247 in favor of indefinitely postponing, the motion passes. So I'm going to recognize.
I'd like to make a motion
Yes.
to continue the meeting till 12 o'clock midnight. Just until we're done, or until 12 o'clock midnight, so that we don't have to come back tomorrow.
Right, we have 2 more articles. Beg your indulgence. The motion is to extend the meeting until midnight, till 12. We have a second, and on that motion, indicate your willingness to go to midnight by pressing 1, or stopping at 11:30 by pressing 2. We'll open the
Reminder that we need a quorum of 200 people. Did I say that?
And remember, we need 200 people, so just stay for the vote. At least stay for the vote.
We can't vote. We can't vote.
Give us 1 second. All right, you can now vote to, number 1 would extend debate until midnight, if necessary. Number 2 would be to terminate debate at 11:30, which would require a second night. And again, nothing that we've done up until now takes effect until we finish all of the articles. We'll close the voting. So we're now extending our meeting until midnight on a majority vote. So Article 20, Mr. Kelly.
Yes, Mr. Roder. Thank you all for your patience. I, Daniel Kelly of 6 North Main Street, move that the town, do I need to read this whole thing, Jim? Submit a home rule petition to the Massachusetts General Court to make amendments to Section 3 and 13 of the town charter as set forth in Article 20 of the warrant for this May 2024 town meeting, and further to authorize the Select Board to approve amendments to the bill before enactment by the legislature, which shall be within the scope of the general objectives of the petition. And I'm happy to explain what that means.
Quickly.
Yes, what I'm asking for right now, the town manager, any town manager in Ipswich who's an unelected official, not necessarily a resident of the town, has the sole obligation and right to approve the members of the planning board. Planning board, one of the most significant boards, as you've seen tonight. They have 5-year terms. They affect the entire development and future of our town. I'm moving in this citizen's petition that beginning next year, so there's a clear, runway for this to happen, that the terms of the existing planning board members will expire, and at that point, the select board
will then decide who should be on the planning board. They are free to permit every single person who's on the planning board to continue. The terms will continue to be staggered. Why am I doing this? Transparency. There'll be a process. When the select board appoints somebody, they have a hearing. They hear from the person. They vet that person. It's all out in public. Two, it's a collective decision by 5 people that we've elected rather than one decision, a decision by one person who we haven't elected. And 3, it's, I forgot my third point, it's so late. So I please urge you to adopt this to bring transparency and, accountability. If you don't like who they chose, you can vote them out. We can't vote the town manager out, but we can vote the select board out if we're unhappy with their decision. So I would urge you, most towns in the Commonwealth either have an elected planning board or planning board selected by the select board. And I don't think they should have to go through an election, but I think they should be vetted by the select board. Thank you very much.
We'll go to the select board. Sarah Player, Chair.
Yes. So the select board unanimously opposes this. This is a charter change. By changing the appointing authority from the town manager to the select board, we'd be risking making these appointments political. Town managers are professional managers who have a lot of experience with a variety of planning boards and understand what it takes to be effective planning board members. Town managers also have extensive experience with economic development. The select board has had some initial discussions of a hybrid process during which the town manager could conduct in-depth interviews with prospective planning board applicants, after which the manager would appoint the planning board member, and then the select board could confirm the appointments. There may be other solutions. We should further investigate this topic prior to making a significant charter change. I move to refer this article to the Government Study Committee.
So it's moved and seconded by Sarah Player that this issue be referred to a committee, specifically to the Government Study Committee. That motion takes precedent over the main motion. It is debatable, and if there are any comments, I'll look to the select board for their position. It's unanimous on the select board side. I'll look to the Finance Committee. Now, what I'm asking for is a report on the motion to refer it to the Government Study Committee, which is different than the main motion.
Ken Swenson, Weinberg Road Finance Committee. Vote 7-1 in favor of this change.
Okay. So the Finance Committee recommends 7-1 to refer it to the Government Study Committee. Let's be clear. What I asked from the Finance Committee was their position on the motion to refer.
The position of the Finance Committee on the motion to refer to the Government Study Committee is 7-1 in favor.
Thank you for your clarification. Planning Board have a motion? If not, we'll go to a vote again. If this is referred to a committee, then we move on to the next article. If it does not, then we go back to the, pardon me?
Can I speak in opposition to
It is debatable, yes.
Thank you. So this was up last October and it was moved to indefinitely postponed. And there were suggestions that it would go to a Government Study Committee. This is like sending it out to die, basically. We should be able to decide yes or no whether this should go. Referring it to a committee is basically killing it. So I would urge you, all of you who are for this and are against this, let's not refer it to a committee. Let's decide. Let's decide.
Sir?
I urge you vote no.
Brian Hone, 29 Upper River Road. I'm a former chair of the Planning Board. I like the idea of this, but I want you to be aware that we are removing a really important check and balance in this town. If this goes forward as written, all of the land use boards.
So the debate is about whether to refer it to a committee or not.
That's exactly the point I'm making. All the land use boards would be appointed by one small group. That group has had mixed results. And, well, a lot of the projects in this town have been built by ZBA and former ZBA members. So be aware of that. That's what you're asking for. So, I like the idea. I support your idea of making it public, but I do think it needs to be done carefully and correctly. And as such, I support the motion to go to study. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Diane Halverson, 3 Palomino Way. I just would like to point out to everyone assembled here that at the last town meeting, the select board is now in charge of the government study committee. So if the government study committee is against this, then what do you think the result of the government study committee will be? Just a comment.
Ma'am, just as a point of correction, I, as a moderator, participate in the appointment of the Government Study Committee, so it's not exclusively the Board of the Select Board. Sir.
John Doonan, still of Topsfield Road, still will be short. Why do you want to give somebody a job that they don't want yet? They want to think it through, so why don't we think it through?
So on the motion made to refer to the Government Study Committee, if there's no further comments or from the audience, a vote on that motion to refer. Vote 1 if you're in favor of referring it to Government Study Committee. Vote 2 if you're not in favor. We'll close the voting. The motion to refer to committee passes, so we'll go to Article 20. No, it wasn't a motion.
Oh, that was the original motion?
No, the motion to refer to a committee replaces the original motion. So when you voted to refer to a committee, that's the end of activity on this article. Article 21, warrant article prohibition.
Before I start, I have a question for the Finance Committee. I'm wondering who on the Finance Committee wrote the Finance Committee's report on this article?
I'm sorry,
That's what I figured. I attended the same meeting that Mr. Schaaf did, and only one of the members of the Finance Committee noted about an overwhelming consensus of climate scientists. That was a misrepresentation.
So you're to make your motion and then make your comments.
Right, but it's okay, fine. I, Ed Marsh of 23 Woods Lane, move that no article shall be placed on the town meeting warrant which presumes the legitimacy or compelling nature of, or cites the impact of any human-related activities on climate change as a basis or justification for the proposed article.
Is there a second? Second. There's a second. Mr. Marsh.
Close your eyes and think back to June 1st, 2023. Next slide, please. It was a beautiful day until about 2 in the afternoon when I realized we probably weren't going to live to see June 2nd. Next slide. In just 8 hours, next slide, please. In just 8 hours, the temperature had increased by 23 degrees, or 39%. Increasing 39% every 8 hours, that meant that by noon on June 2nd, it was going to be 221 degrees. Now, obviously, that's absurd. Next slide. But the point is that time periods matter. If we select 8 hours in the middle of the day, we can create a distorted impression. If we look at just 140 years since the Industrial Revolution, we can do the same thing. And that's what most of the man-made climate change panic is built on. Next slide. When we look at our planet's history, we see that we're actually at one of the cooler points. Time periods can be used to trick us. Next slide. Now, of course, we know that climate change is real. The planet cools at night and it warms during the day. It cools in winter and warms in summer. And it's cooled and warmed over its history. Here you see Ipswich. On the left, covered by a glacier. On the right, covered by ocean. And all of that was before anyone ever sipped water from a half-liter plastic water bottle. Next slide. Not only are we at the cool point in temperature, but it turns out that we're also at a low point in CO2. In fact, it's so low that it's now on the verge of affecting plants' ability to photosynthesize. Next slide. And in fact, CO2 and temperature don't correlate as we're told. We've got young people now tragically deciding not to have kids because they've been led to believe that we're going to be incinerated as CO2 rises. Why the panic? Next slide. Data is manipulated. As you just heard, as I tried to raise the point, the Finance Committee report specifically misrepresented the group's discussion that evening. Nearly a third of temperature data that's reported to us is simply fabricated. The temperature stations aren't even there, and many that are located in parking lot, urban-type areas that are naturally hotter. Next slide. The data that they do have is adjusted to match the narrative. The blue line here shows actual data, and the red line shows how it's reported. Next slide. And then there are assumptions. Assumptions built into the models, which we're told are precise enough to predict changes of just fractions of degrees. Clouds are an example. They play a massive role in the temperature on Earth. But you see here, experts aren't even sure what role they play. Are they hotter or cooler? If you've been at Cranes Beach when a cloud rolls overhead, you know it doesn't take a PhD in UN funding to figure that out. The models assume that clouds are the same across 60 square miles. Next slide. This shows Ipswich in the middle of a 60 square mile grid. So this model assumes that the cloud cover is the same from Hudson, New Hampshire to York, Maine to Marlborough, Mass to Quincy, even out to Stowagon Bank. Think about how nuts that is. That is the nature of the scholarship and the science upon which these claims are based. Next slide. Now some will argue, but what about the experts? First, they pervert the science. We know that science has never settled, but we're told to just step aside and let the experts handle it. Next slide. And the supposed 97% of scientists we're told agree on climate change, that stat is deeply flawed. It turns out that only 1.6% of papers actually agree. So spend what you want personally to live how you want. But for some, that's not enough. They're compelled to tell us we must too, even though our average property tax is already half the average Social Security benefit. Next slide. The point is, it doesn't matter. China has no intention of participating in carbon reduction efforts. As long as it's the US and the EU fiddling around, it won't make a difference. Next slide. Ipswich's contribution is so vanishingly small that it's hard to actually say the number. 0.0000478,615. Next slide. Global man-made CO2 emissions in 2022 are estimated at 38 gigatons. Next slide. China, India, and Russia's are estimated at 17 gigatons, virtually half the entire globe. The US at only 4.8 gigatons, just 1/8 or 12% of the globe. Next slide. And Ipswich, you see it there? Of course you don't. It's unseeable. We could tear down every house, put sugar in every gas tank, cut the cord of every electric stove, remove every thermostat, sow the fields with salt so nobody uses fertilizer, stop treating water, and it's not going to make a difference. Next slide. The point is that every dollar is wasted. It can't achieve any of what we're told is the goal. Nothing Ipswich does is going to make a difference. We have so many places to spend money. Let's put it there instead of chasing ghosts. I urge you to vote in support of this article so that we rein in this truly meaningless spending.
So,
now can I ask the question of the Finance Committee?
no. You can wait to hear the report from the committees, and then we're going to go to a con mic, and then we'll come back to a pro mic. So from the Select Board. Linda.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So the Select Board creates the warrant, and this article would not have any impact on citizen petitions like the one that's being brought here now. Without getting into a debate over climate change, this petition seeks to add a new bylaw mandating the actions or inaction of future select boards based on subjective opinion as to what defines, quote, impact of any human-related activities on climate change. And it fails to define what determines a presumption of legitimacy or compelling nature of climate change. This article is vague and confusing, and it proposes a bar on future leaders of this town that simply can't be done. The Select Board unanimously opposes this article.
Thank you. Finance Committee?
The Finance Committee unanimously opposed this article. The scientific consensus is overwhelming that climate change is occurring and that the humans are the primary source of this climate change. There's really, we can call today Wednesday if we want, but it's still Tuesday.
Thank you. Sir?
Yeah, Rex Bradford, 10 Outbreak Road. I'm not going to waste the room's time debating climate change. I would just like to reiterate that why are we bothering to vote on restricting what kind of articles can be put before the town?
Mr. Marsh?
It's important to note for the town meeting that the Finance Committee, when they discussed this article, one person raised the topic of consensus among experts, and that person then wrote the Finance Committee's report, which the rest of the committee apparently didn't review or let go through, saying members, multiple people, and that is a complete misrepresentation. In fact, one member of the committee actually acknowledged sharing some concerns that I brought.
Thank you, Mr.
Call the
Marsh.
question.
May I respond?
No.
The Finance Committee
what we
reviews
are
that
not, What we
report.
are not going to do is to get into a debate about the content of the Finance Committee report, because that's not relevant. I'm going to go to this side, looking for.
I would like to call the question.
Thank you very much. You've done it appropriately. So on the motion made to call the question, we're going to vote on Article 21. The motion is to prohibit future warrant articles where the justification is climate change. If you feel that's the appropriate position to take, then vote 1 on the motion. If you feel it's inappropriate, then vote 2 on the motion. So we'll open for voting. Close the voting. With a simple majority, the motion fails. We'll now move to Article number 22, and we'll recognize Mr. Hatch.
Thank you, Jim. I, Whitney Hatch of 176 Argilla Road, move that the Town Government Study Committee be charged with an evaluation of the governance structure of the Electric Light Department, as set forth in Article 22 of the warrant for this town meeting.
Do we have a second? Now, I'm going to recognize Mr. Hatch because he intends to make an amendment to what was presented in the Finance Committee report.
Thank you. By substitution, I, Whitney Hatch of 176 Argilla Road, amend the prior motion to read as follows. The Government Study Committee shall evaluate potential benefits available to Ipswich's citizens and customers, its government, and its electric light department, ELD, by evaluating a change to an elected electric light commission, researching and assessing other electric commission models, including the existing select board governance model in place in Ipswich, and proposing necessary bylaw and charter changes to implement modifications to optimize and streamline ELD governance in Ipswich. The GSC is instructed to engage in the public in evaluating and in developing its findings, both on this specific proposal and on other alternatives which emerged during its research. The GSC is strongly encouraged to recruit and regularly engage in this matter a volunteer 5-citizen technical advisory board to assist in its research and deliberations, and may request third-party research where appropriate and where funding is available. The GSC shall report its findings and recommendations, including appropriate warrant language, for any recommendations to the Select Board and Town Meeting for action at its next annual town meeting, May 2025.
Thank you, Mr. Hatch. On the motion to amend, is there a second? There's a second. Normally, we would debate the amendment I'm going to ask for the opinion of the boards on the amendment. Does the board wish to take a position? I see none. Finance Committee on the amendment. I see none. From the audience, is there any? This is on the amendment. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So what I'm hearing is the Finance Committee supports the amendment 8-0. If there's no discussion from the hall, we'll go to a vote on the amendment. If the amendment passes, then we have to vote on the amendment itself as a motion. So it's going to be two votes. First is on the amendment to substitute what Mr. Hatch has read to what's in the printed document. So on that motion, all those in favor of the amendment, the substitution amendment, signify by saying, by pressing 1. Those opposed, 2. The vote is to vote in favor of the amendment being substituted for the original language. So if you vote 1, you want the newer language as opposed to the older language. If you vote 2, you would rather have the older language. So we'll close the voting. So the amendment passes. Now we'll go to a discussion of the amended motion. So we'll go back to Mr. Hatch.
Thank you. I wished I'd had the opportunity to clarify that the amendment really made the original proposal less restrictive in terms of what the Government Study Committee should and shouldn't do, and explicitly included the current structure that we have in Ipswich as part of the study, which the original one didn't. The Ipswich Electric Light Department, ELD, is one of the true gems of this town. Its continued reliability and success in delivering economical service while meeting the considerable challenges of greater electrification is a big deal for our town and its future economic success. But the ELD faces a conundrum, supervised and advised as it is by 3 different entities: the Select Board as electric commissioners, the Advisory Electric Subcommittee, and the Town Manager. 50 years ago, when the industry was stable and unchanging, our Select Board as commissioners model was suitable. Not much changed from year to year, except perhaps in 1 or 2 instances where the ELD managers quit, reportedly due in part to this arrangement. But in today's environment of accelerating demand for electrification, as well as technological and industry changes facing the ELD, the arrangement is less suitable. As customers and owners of our ELD, we should insist on greater clarity, accountability, and transparency. We should insist on clear lines of authority and a streamlined, rational governance arrangement in which electric commissioners are 100% dedicated to ELD matters without having to attend to a myriad of other issues which cross the Select Board's desk every day, amply illustrated by tonight's warrant. We need dedicated and singularly focused commissioners to regulate and support our ELD manager and staff. Can you think of another business with $19 million in revenues and 22 employees that is governed in such a way by 3 separate entities? It seems especially inappropriate given the accelerating industry and technology changes the ELD will have to navigate while continuing to provide exemplary reliability, affordable service, and while meeting what many expect to be a doubling in electricity demand over the next 15 and 20 years. As a 3-term member of the Electric Subcommittee, I've come to believe that we need to restructure the way we manage and govern our ELD to move faster and be more efficient in meeting these future challenges. Or, at the very least, we should study and understand what other options might be superior. We have an inherently unstable governance structure, and we should see what we can do to adopt to fix it. This article would task the Government Study Committee to build on its last report. The GSC would recruit 5 additional subject matter experts, consider how consultants might help and seek funding to hire them, study our existing governance structure, and study structures and approaches employed by other municipalities with similar light departments in particular Belmont, where it recently replaced a system
Time.
very similar to Ipswich's. Let's put the Government Study Committee to work, which is what it's intended to do, study governance matters. Thank you for your patience and sticking around for this last item, and I ask that you vote in favor of this modest proposal by saying yes. Thank you.
Select Board?
Thanks for,
Sarah Blair?
thanks for staying, everybody. Your elected select board members are also your elected light commissioners. We are also your elected water and wastewater commissioners and the group that sets the tax rate. The same group of 5 elected people set all of these rates, so we are uniquely positioned to best manage all of these rates for residents. If the light commissioners are separately elected or appointed, they'll run the ELD like a business, like a board of directors, with the bottom line as the priority, not necessarily the rates. The ELD is a town asset, not a private business. The select board, as light commissioners this year, has set specific annual goals to increase our leadership with the ELD department. And we now meet monthly with the electric light manager, and we're increasing our relationship with the subcommittee. The select board thinks this article is premature. We would like the opportunity to complete this year, analyze the management changes that we've instituted, review our effectiveness, and develop a permanent path forward. Let's take a thoughtful approach to this discussion. The select board opposes this article 4-1.
Finance Committee?
Ken Swenson, Finance Committee. Finance Committee voted 8-0 in favor.
We have about 4 minutes before midnight.
R.J. Lyman, 165 Argilla Road.
A friendly call for the question would be appreciated.
I urge the 179 of you who voted in favor of Article 20 also to vote in favor of the rest, as I now call the question.
The question has been called. So on the motion, on the amended motion to refer governance issues to be studied by the Government Study Commission, all those in favor signify by saying 1. All those opposed, 2. So we'll open it for voting. I'll close the voting. It is referred to the Government Study Committee. Thank you for your attendance. A motion to dissolve. Move to adjourn. All in favor? All opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you very much for your attendance. And please turn in your remotes.